The rain was relentless that morning. Each drop seemed to carry the weight of the world, pelting down on the cracked sidewalks and empty streets. People hurried by with umbrellas, their faces hidden, their eyes fixed anywhere but on the young woman sitting alone outside the cafe. She was curled up against the wall, knees pulled tightly to her chest, her coat soaked through. Her dark hair clung to her face, hiding the faint bruises and the deep exhaustion in her eyes. Her name was Lena. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Not because she didn't want to, but because every time she tried, the words caught in her throat. Life had taught her that people didn't want to hear her story, they just wanted her to disappear. Inside the cafe, the air was warm and rich with the smell of roasted coffee beans. Customers chatted, typing on laptops, sipping steaming cups of comfort. None of them noticed Lena through the fogged-up window, except one man. His name was Ethan. He was in his early 40s, a quiet man who worked as an architect in the city. He had a habit of people watching when he came to this cafe, but that morning, his eyes kept drifting toward the girl outside. Something about the way she sat, so still, so small, pulled at him. He had seen her before in the neighborhood, but today, the rain made her look like she was disappearing into the pavement. Ethan didn't overthink it. He walked to the counter, ordered 2 large coffees, and added a blueberry muffin, warm, fresh from the oven. Then he stepped outside, the bell over the door jingling behind him. Lena didn't look up when he approached. She was used to people either ignoring her or dropping a few coins without making eye contact. But Ethan didn't toss anything into a cup. He crouched down so his eyes were level with hers, holding out the coffee. "You look like you could use something warm," he said softly. Lena hesitated. Her hands trembled as she took the cup, the warmth seeping through her cold fingers. She muttered something that barely sounded like, "Thank you," her voice so faint it was almost lost in the rain. Ethan smiled. "And this muffin?" "No strings attached. Just figured you might be hungry." She stared at the muffin for a long time before taking it. For the first time in months, someone had looked at her, not through her. They sat there together, sipping coffee in the rain. Ethan didn't push her to talk. He just stayed, letting the silence be safe. And slowly, Lena began to speak, not all at once, but in fragments. She told him she'd left home at 16 to escape a violent stepfather. She'd bounced between shelters and the streets, always keeping her head down. She'd been promised help before, only to be taken advantage of or betrayed. Trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford. Ethan listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. When she finished, he simply said, "No one should have to go through that alone." That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Ethan came to the cafe every morning, always bringing 2 coffees and a muffin. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Slowly, Lena's voice grew stronger. She started to smile, hesitant, but real. Ethan learned she loved drawing but hadn't held a pencil in years. She learned he'd lost his wife 2 years ago and was still figuring out how to live without her. They understood each other's silences. But there were still challenges. Lena had no ID, no job, Northwest safe place to sleep. Nights were the hardest, cold, dangerous, and full of fear. Ethan wanted to help, but he knew handing her money wouldn't solve everything. So, he connected her with a local women's shelter run by a friend he trusted. The first night Lena stayed there, she almost didn't go in. But Ethan stood outside until she did, promising he'd be there in the morning. At the shelter, Lena slowly began rebuilding her life. She got counseling, learned basic job skills, and even started sketching again. The first drawing she gave Ethan was of a steaming cup of coffee on a rainy morning. He framed it and kept it on his desk. Months later, Lena stood behind the counter of that same cafe, wearing a clean apron, her hair tied back, a small scar on her cheek still visible but no longer hidden. She was working part-time now, saving for a small apartment. And one rainy morning, she saw a young man sitting outside, shivering. Without hesitation, she made 2 coffees and grabbed a muffin. She walked outside, crouched down to his level, and said, "You look like you could use something warm." In that moment, she realized something. The coffee Ethan had given her wasn't just about warmth, it was about hope. And hope, once shared, had a way of spreading. Message: sometimes, the smallest act of kindness doesn't just change a moment, it changes a life.